So, okay. So let's start with Windows first. I mean, this training's first module, which is about Windows Server hybrid core infrastructure with deploy and manage identity infrastructure. When we talk about identity infrastructure, we are Active Directory in Microsoft. Active Directory is a network service that maintains the life cycle of networked objects. When I talk about networked objects, I'm talking about users, security groups, computer accounts, and their classification, and policy governance. When I talk about policy in Active Directory, I'm talking about group policy. When I talk about the networked objects, I'm talking about computer systems. Those are domain joined. I'm talking about usernames and their passwords, groups where users connect with one another. Everything that is maintained within Active Directory is Active Directory object. Now, Active Directory keeps the information and record management in its own database. And that particular database is known as NTDS, right? This database is locally available in Active Directory server. That Active Directory server is known as domain controller. Okay. Now, many domain controllers form one big picture of highly available model of Active Directory. The domain controllers, which are having a database, and the database is holding up the information, is running through a service which is known as ADDS, Active Directory Service. You understanding what I'm trying to explain here? Now, Active Directory is available on premises in your own data centers. You're managing it. Now, the similar Active Directory is, if available in the cloud, its name is changed. Entra. That's the big difference. Rest is the same. There are some feature differences as well, because Active Directory, I'm working with Active Directory or playing with this particular software construct since 1999. That was the beginning of my career when Windows NT 3.x introduced. Then Windows 2000 Server, and move on. So uh, when we talk about the difference in between the work group environment and the domain environment, the big difference is work group environment is a smaller environment where there is no centralized approach of administration. Active Directory comes with centralized approach. When we talk about the domain and the work group, what's going to be the definition of a domain? The central administration of networked objects is called domain. This is the bigger picture. One Active Directory holding up a lot of different people associated with. You know the capacity, the basic default capacity of Entra, 50,000 user accounts. Quite a big capacity. If you are the administrator of Entra and you have reached up to 50,000 user accounts, you want to increase the capacity, request Microsoft to increase the quota. They're going to increase from 50,000 to 100,000 and can go beyond even, depending on the size of the organizations. There are these big organizations like Petronas, ExxonMobil, VMware, right? Microsoft itself, quite big organizations, thousands of employees. So my last experience was with Broadcom. So I worked in Broadcom for 8 years. So before Broadcom, it was VMware. So I was the direct employee of VMware. So in VMware, the total count of the employees were around 44,000 employees all across the globe. Once Broadcom taken over, so they made a big major layoff. So now it's around, I think Broadcom has got 20,000 plus 44,000, 64,000, and they just shelf the rest of the employees, around 8,000 left behind. So now total count from 64,000 is now 28 or 30,000 in between, right? So similarly, Dell. Before VMware, I was in Dell. So Dell has got 100,000 plus number of employees. So this is the case. Many bigger organizations has got this much of the big architecture. There are some of the smaller organizations, 200 employees, 300 employees. So they consider like, hey, 80 cannot go beyond 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 people. No, it has got the bigger structure, bigger size, right? So in the same way, when we talk about introduction to ADDS, ADDS is a service name that runs that is the heart of your domain controller. If ADDS service, Active Directory Domain Service, if it turns off, actually your domain controller dead. It's not working. So ADDS is the heart of the service of domain controllers. Now, any authentication and authorization based system in Microsoft, if it is called domain system, so the system is running on a computer system, and that computer is known as DC, domain controller. If you make the highly available model of the domain controller, it's called ADC, additional domain controller. So you can have unlimited additional domain controllers. It doesn't have any kind of limitations. So the more you create the domain controllers, the better the availability of your domain services you're going to have, right? So in this case, we move on. And what is a domain controller? It is the logical grouping of logical and physical components. So when we talk about the physical components, so we are talking about the physical computer systems which are holding the domain services. On the right hand side, you can see domain controllers. Domain controllers store this information in its database. So that is called NTDS. Then it has got the global catalog servers, a domain controller which is holding up all organizational information is called global catalog. Okay, so the very first domain controller in an organization is also known as GC, global catalog. And there are some secure domain controllers as well. That, for example, our company is located in Kuala Lumpur, but our branch office is in Johor Bahru. Let's suppose. But Johor Bahru location is quite distant one, and there is no domain administrator. So only the domain administrator is in Kuala Lumpur. So what's going to happen? The central administration is managing all the versions of domain controllers across the different branches. So RODC is one of the secure domain controller if it has just gone compromised or hacked or someone stolen the box. So your data is still not in bad state. You can reproduce the domain controller and set it over there because it is read only. No one can change the domain controller's data in this case. RODCs are used for faster authentication and authorization purposes, right? So you can have this model with this um, physical existence. Now, when we talk about the logical existence, we have got the database, the data store. It has got its schema partitions. What is a schema? Schema means you decide what kind of data domain controller is going to hold on. So schema is actually the structure of the database that is being held within the domain controller. So it has got schema. The domain is representing the business, like mybusiness.com. So what is this? This is domain name that represents my business. So these businesses are actually identified with the DNS naming conventions. What is DNS? A service that resolves computer systems names into IP addresses or IP addresses into computer system names. Just like I don't memorize so many IP addresses. My mind or my brain is not wired in that way. That's why we call people with their names, right? So we call businesses with their relevant names. We memorize them with their relevant names, right? So that's the same thing. So in order to memorize some businesses, we call them with their names, and we want a system to translate that name into the machine language that is called IP address. Microsoft.com, I can memorize, but I cannot memorize 100 IP addresses of Microsoft.com. Understandable, right? So in that case, it is similar like if you are running your business, your business registration authority, like in Malaysia, is SSM, correct? So the SSM has got unique business registration number. So whenever you're going to introduce yourself, you present your visiting card or business card to the person. On that business card, you see your business name. But for the better reference, you can set up your business identity number as well, but not necessarily needed, correct? Think about instead of business name, you just print the business number, nothing to do with it, correct? So the same thing happens in DNSs. DNS is the heart of the domain controller. Why? Because domain controller uses DNS to resolve the object names in the network. For example, there are 1,000 people in working in our organization. Each person has got its laptop. Each person has got its username. Now the laptop required to register with the domain controller. What is that registration? The same, the way we registered our business with the registration authority. So it can be identified over the network, correct? Now what happens in this case, the laptop is a machine that is registered by Windows domain controller, and I got the username I used to access services through the laptop. Now what happens in this case, the laptop is considered to be the platform that is used by the user to gain access to the authorized resources, correct? What are the resources? It could be the print server, file server, your web services, right? Everything fall under as one object identified by domain controller. Think about your DNS is not working. So your domain controller, partial or maybe more than partial services gone. So DNS has got a very important role in domain and domain administration. So in case when we talk about hierarchical structure, means roots, branches, leaves kind of structure. So this is correlates to one big entity that is called a tree. What is tree? Tree gives us the, you can say, a lineage. Like root is considered to be the topmost stuff. Then comes the branches. Then comes the leaves. So I can have the domain, then I got the subdomains, then I got the OUs, then I got the users, and users considered to be the leaves, right? So in that case, domain has got very first important thing in picture for identification in a business, forest. Forest concept is multiple businesses, group of companies, just like Petronas has a big footprint. So they have got petrochemical stuff. So if I talk about petrochemical things, there are so many things we are producing out of it. Even if we just talk about the raw oil, the black raw oil, we produce diesel, petrol, some different other oil kind of categories, right? What is this? This is the different type of business streams we are working with. Even polyester is the outcome of the same oil kind of stuff, right? So similar way, we can have multiple businesses. Like for example, I remember I was working in an organization. Its name was Altair Group. It was an Arabic organization based in UAE. So they have got they are the big Ford motor dealers. in the region, entire UAE. So they got around 6 months or 7 months. They have got a big queue that people have got the test drive big queue for the cars, right? They have got hospitality division where they have got big hotels across the region, and the cosmetics was the third business. All of them fall under one big umbrella. Now, what is this? This is the forest. One domain is taking care of the automotives. Another domain is taking care of the hospitality. The third domain is taking care of the cosmetics. 8,000 employees, 2,000 in one, 2,000 in another, 4,000 in another. So what is this? Segregation of different businesses. So domain controller holding up multiple different types of businesses for authentication and authorization. It is just like you just came over here. So you see it's a big building having multiple levels, each level containing multiple different type of offices, right? And these offices are consuming common resources like electricity, air conditioning, lifts, escalators, common for everyone, but levels are different. Think of it like that. So these are the different resources. Escalator is one resource. Electricity, air conditioning are separate resources. But in order to consume these resources, you need to go through the one information office desk that's going to allow you to go to a certain level. Otherwise, you cannot be consuming these resources. Correct? Now, consider this classroom is one of the resource. Chair, table, LED, internet connectivity, everything. Now, in order to gain these resources, you need to come through the reception. If the reception going to stop you over there, you won't be able to consume it. Consider reception is your domain controller that authenticates you and authorizes you. So authentication is a process that identify you based on your identity, correct? Now, in that case, authorization is a process that provide you the consumption of resources. It could be the chair, air conditioning, your trainer itself, right? So domain controller gives you these benefits of authentication. First thing first, access, you reach, then you negotiate, then you got authenticated, and then you got authorized. So access, authentication, authorization, triple A. Got it? So domain controller gives you these kind of scenarios. Now, when we have got the sites, what is site? Every business gonna have multiple branch offices. These branch offices are known as sites. And similar for OUs. Organizational units are actually known as the grouping of multiple objects. You can create OUs for computers. You can create OUs of security groups. You can create OUs of users and groups as well to segregate, to classify. So you can classify users based on departments, regions. So this is one of the big object, and this OU is the use not only for the classification, but also for the policy implications. So you create GPO policy, apply to the OU, rest of the people are going to have the same policy, right? So these are called containers. Now, when we talk about the schema, so schema is actually the NTDS or Active Directory relevant stuff that takes care of the user's information, objects, computer systems information, and make it the part of your database. Now, this particular schema has got multiple partitions. Each partition is known as the, is it an application partition? Or it is something like the business partition. Most of the time, we talk about the application partition. Think of it like Microsoft Exchange Server, one application, SharePoint, another application, right? So each application has got its separate partition where they're going to have their objects. For example, if I talk about Microsoft Exchange Server, you got mailboxes. Inside mailboxes, you're going to have the tasks, to-dos, calendar, contacts. So these kind of data is held within specific partition of Active Directory, right? Similarly for SharePoints, sites, folders, right? So these are the different types of partitions. So partition is something specifically for the applications aligned with Active Directory. So domains. Domains are representation of the businesses that you registered with Active Directory, and you go with these businesses. Separate domains representing separate businesses. Domain tree could be the sub businesses. Like I got Altair Motors is domain. Then got automotives under Altair Motors. Then got hotel management under the same domain. Cosmetics, another domain. So you can create a domain tree. Just like, for example, I say Altair Motor is one big domain. So it's going to be altairmotor.com. Now, under Altair Motor, we have got the automotives, dot Altair Motors. Then could be cosmetics, dot Altair Motors. So this is something called subdomain or domain tree. Now, all these things fall under one forest. Each tree in a forest is known as one specific business. Multiple trees becomes one forest. You understand my point? So a forest is actually the combination of multiple trees that contains the root, the branches, the leaves kind of structure. Think of it like that. Similarly, under the forest, you need to classify the data, the objects. And that classification you put up in the groups, could be the OUs. The word container is the similar thing as of OU, but the difference in between container and OU is OU can receive policies from group policy. Container cannot. So you can create folder. A folder is a container that could hold the security groups, users. But in terms of OU, which is also acting like a container, has got more feature sets. Like you can assign group policy directly to the OUs in this way. So in Entra, the OU is changed with admin units, AU, rather than OU. But the concept is the same. Say this is your Active Directory icon. And in this way, it is going to representing a big organization. So consider like this is a building, and it has got another variant or the version of Active Directory that is in the cloud anywhere. So I use some other color. But both of them have got the similar architecture. Okay, so in this way, let me just, okay. So in this way, if you go with your business name, mybusiness.com, hold on. So this is your domain name. Consider this is your domain name. You don't need to write. You just focus what I'm just trying to explain here, because I'm going to share the pictures with you at the end of the session. So you can say that's your domain name. Now under this domain name, which is resolved by who? DNS, right? Now, if you have got multiple businesses, for example, so let's suppose you got another business, which is, you can say, um, I just try to jot down the stuff below. So consider this is your domain name, mybase.com. So for example, you got multiple businesses. So let's suppose you got one of the business that is automotive. Another business is hotels. Another business is cosmetics. So you got different businesses, right? Now, in this scenario, you got different choices to design your domain architecture. So on the other hand, you can say this is the each one, my business is considered to be the forest. So this is the forest, one forest. Hmm? And this is your tree. So these are considered to be the trees. This is the tree. This is also a tree. So these are the trees. Now, if I try to write down these different trees in the business forest domain name architecture, how they're going to look like. So it's going to be like, for example, it's going to be like examples.
But
Number one is
yeah, tinggal
automotive dot
hmm,
mybiz dot com. Number two, hotels dot mybiz dot com. Number three is going to be cosmetics dot mybiz dot com. So you see, there are these are known as in domain nominations. These things are known as the FQDNs, fully qualified domain names, right? And each business is considered to be one tree in the whole big forest. Okay, that is one example. You can have some other examples as well. Like there is another business you acquired, and that business is oil and gas. Let's suppose. So this is totally new business. It's an oil and
dia berjalan di
gas
pagi.
dot
Betul itu
com.
dengan production
So it is considered to be
forest
a
kita tuh
totally separate forest
forest ini bisnisnya ada banyak ramai ada
because it's an independent
limaunya itu
autonomous business.
bisnis
So
ada yang mau sawit
you
ya
can say it can have multiple forests as well. Now, in this scenario, let's
Easy,
say, for
easy,
example,
easy.
I pick this new business and I want to align it with this existing business, my biz. Now, the first thing first, hey, who gonna be the primary business? If mybiz.com acquired this oil and gas, so you want mybiz.com's IT team globally manage oil and gas, or you want oil and gas IT team globally manage MyBiz and rest of the stuff. That's going to be the company's decision. Let's suppose, for the sake of understanding, I say MyBiz acquired oil and gas, but it's a totally separate forest. When I talk about separate forest, I'm talking about what is forest, by the way. Let me explain this first. A forest is, just a moment. Now, what is a forest? Is a logical security boundary of a business. So it's a security boundary. So it is going to define actually, hey, this business has got data, resources, must be secure. So it actually cordons off the whole business resources, not to be taken care by anyone else, not to be accessed by anyone else. So a forest is the logical security boundary. Now, there are two separate forests. Okay. Now what's going to happen? A tree is actually represents. So what going to be the tree? The tree is the identification of a business. On the other hand, you can say domain. Okay. So that's the identification. And this naming convention is known as domain name system, DNS. Now, when you combine these two, actually within the forest, if you are having multiple trees, they have got transitive trust. They trust each other, built in, because their security boundary is same. So they trust each other. So you can say here, they trust. So it's going to be the built-in trust. You can say built-in trust. All these domain controllers or the domains trusting each other. So they have got the built-in trust. You're understanding this picture? Is it easy to understand?
Yes, yes.
So inside a domain, you got the built-in trust. So I try to, uh-oh. Now this is the built-in trust. Fine, understandable. You don't need to. Now, what do I mean by built-in trust? Built-in trust means, hey, the cosmetic user, the cosmetic domain user can access the automotive domain users resources upon request or having some connections. No need to do additional stuff. The administrator can provide resources. But the MyBiz user cannot access the oil and gas users or their resources. In order to gain access to the resources, what is needed? A trust is needed. Now, in this case, for example, we are talking about what resources I'm talking about. I'm talking about databases, storage. Let me just put it here. This is database. We say file servers, printers, and stuff like that. So I mentioned right everything over here. So consider these are the resources. Network resources. And what are these resources? You can say databases, storage, network storage, okay? And on the other hand, if you just look into this, print servers, file servers, line of business applications, I mean your custom applications. So all these things are considered to be the resources. Okay, understandable. Now, if this forest required to gain access, so I use this line, to these resources, or over here, okay? So what is needed? You require actually forest to forest trust. So this is what called explicit trust. You can say transitive or non-transitive, both. I mean, two-way direction or one-way direction, whatever, but you require. Trust is a process when domain actually authenticates you to do the stuff or access the resources. So this is something that you should be aware of it, and this is the authentication mechanism. Understood? All of you. Any questions here? I think this is clear, no doubts in it, right? Okay, so in order to have the Active Directory work properly, you require DNS be the part of it. Understood? And this is, we are going to use this diagram in a couple of days also. So it's Entra ID. So, okay, I minimize this. So that was the difference in forest and domain trees and stuff. I believe you are now understandable. So you see here, that is a deforest. I was explaining. So multiple different domains communicating with one another. So you see, the tree domains or the forest domains. So could be separate, like a datum is one business, Contoso is another business, Seattle.contoso is the child domains, right? So the same thing we discussed here. So there becomes childs, the tree part I'm talking about, or could be independence. Similarly, if you wanted to classify users, devices, so you can build the different child domains with their relevant OUs or one domain with different OUs, right? So a domain is actually a logical networking of multiple networked objects. So you can say like you got multiple different domains. So they are authenticated with one another through the resources, right? So similarly, user objects. You can create users in Active Directory. You just open up Active Directory users and computers, and you go there and you create a user account, right? So for example, I give you an idea through this practical demonstration. Hold on a minute. So here, for example, you want to access your Active Directory. So you go to the users and computers. That's the graphical interface you can start with. And you see this is the interface of your Active Directory. You can create the users by right-clicking here, and you can go with the new, and then you can pick up the user, and it opens up with this information. You provide your username, first name, last name. It's going to be automatically filled up. That's the important field. Like what's going to be the logon name. If you just forget about all of the stuff, only pick up this one, sufficient enough, right? Once the user is created, you need to pick up the user, just like you can see the Contoso user. You can double click it, or you can go directly into the properties, and you see the different tabs. Each tab represents multiple different attributes of the user. A, a piece of information that is aligned with the user is called attribute, like first name, last name, phone number, business address, home address. Each and everything is considered to be the attribute. These attributes are very much important. Some applications directly hit the attribute of the user, just like desk phone needed in Microsoft Skype for Business, right? Similarly, email address is used by Microsoft Exchange Server, right? But so there are so many different attributes that you can fill in and you can use it. And another thing over here within the attributes you're going to see, and that is considered to be the account information that is filled by during the user creation process. So the SAM account or username is the one that you're going to see here. And you can pick up the information like password expires or never expires, user cannot change the password, on these kind of things. You can do the configurations. Similarly, if I go back to my slide deck here, so this piece of information you can see define the user objects, the username, the user password, and how you're going to have the user group memberships. So you fill in the attributes and the user has got their relevant uh, data being associated with, which could be when you talk about the group types, like what kind of group you're using. Normally, there are two different types of groups. One is called the security group and another one is called the distribution group. Security group is actually used for NTFS permissions be penetrated through the resources. What is NTFS permissions? Hey, I want to have access to my files and folders. To gain access to the files and folders, the file system is known as NTFS, is used by Microsoft Windows. FAT32 is the older file system, which is no more actually the part of this whole game. Whenever you install Microsoft Windows, so the file system, the default file system it uses is NTFS. Now, files are running on top of the file system. So how are you going to gain access? Through the file system. NTFS permissions are the file system permissions. So the user who accesses the files with read, write, delete, modify kind of, so these information or this piece of informations are going to be the part of the security group. If a user belongs to a security group, so the security group has got access rights to the files and folders. So the same right traded onto the user's list. User can access it. And that's the best practice also. If you have got 1,000 users and all the users have got access to different files and folders, so better to you configure the groups and assign rights to the groups. Make the user members of the group. When the user leaves the membership, the rights are lifted up. Think about 1,000 users and you need to configure rights for those users individually. You need to do the same thing 1,000 times, which is not a good practice. So for example, 5 groups and you configure rights only 5 times. Rest, whenever you create the user, make the user the member of the group, rights are penetrated. No need to do the same activity again and again, correct? So this is a very important thing. Distribution group. We use distribution groups for mass mailings. Yeah, like for example, I got 6,000 people in my organization, employees, and we on monthly basis we produce some organization-wide email announcements. So rather, I use the to field of my email address and I copy 6,000 people in the email address field. Maybe there is no space to fit in. So better, I create one org group or organization group, and the email address of the organization group is myorganization.mydomain.com. So every user is the member of the distribution group. Whenever I send email to my business.mydomain.com, every user going to receive it. So distribution group is used for the mass mailing. So what happens in this case, you got actually, if I go to the whiteboarding, so you can see here, okay, we talk about the group. So groups are of two types. One is called the security group, and the other one is called the distribution group. So the security group is used for NTFS permissions plus GPO, group policy objects. So you assign these things to security group, whereas the distribution group, you assign email, or you can say SMTP address. So in this case, the example gonna be like, hey, my department, my org. So for example, I say at mydomain.com. So this is your email SMTP address. So what happens in this case, whenever the user going to be the part of the distribution group, they're going to receive emails on behalf of the distribution. So we use it for mass mailing most of the time. Understood? And there is the security group. So under security group, we got user permissions to files and folders, file and folder access, plus group policy object policies, implications you can go with. Additionally, you can say optional now, can have email address as well. But this is an optional thing. We don't use it. For security purpose, we don't use email address for the security groups. The next in, you can say Entra, it is called Office 365 group. Office 365 group has got the combination of security plus distribution capability altogether. So whenever you apply policy or security, it's the best practice. Make the user member of the group and the policy going to be applied. Remove the user from the membership, policy got lifted up. So it's much better that whenever you're using it, so for example, you say a user, you want to apply a policy, so make user member of the group to apply all the permissions and policies. So this becomes in this way. So the direction is going to be inward, or it could be in this direction as well, which means remove membership to revoke permissions and policies. It's easy. And best practices. Clear? This is the best practice. So group scope, groups either you create is considered to be local to the domain controller. It could be global across multiple domain controllers, or it could be universal across forest, multiple businesses, global administrator. So that is called universal. So if you go at forest level, so you go with universal group capability. If you go for the global level, means from one tree to another tree, or from one domain controller to another domain controller, is called global admin, global policies. So if I go to my whiteboarding, once again here, forest level trust, you require universal groups. Universal, GRP, is better to understand. Forest level. Okay, if you are at built-in trust level, so you're going to have global. So I mentioned here GRP, global group. So you're understanding my picture also? Same here. Global group. Wait a minute. Yeah. So the global group travels within the forest. Across forest, universal required. But in Entra, there is no universal. In Entra, only global. Okay, that's the difference. But in on-premises, you got multiple domains, multiple domain controllers. Among us, multiple domain controllers that fall under single forest, global group is sufficient enough. But multiple forests like oil and gas is a totally separate company. And MyBiz is a separate company, but they're going to connect, combine together, universal group. Okay? So going back. In this scenario, computers and security principles. Whenever a computer joins with Active Directory, Active Directory creates an object for that computer, and that object remains until the computer is being used, authenticated. If the computer has been discarded, you can delete the object. Sometimes it happens like your computer has got disconnected from your domain. You need to reset the domain relationship with your computer account by resetting the account. You right click and reset. It resets the account profiling with your domain controller, but it never deletes the account information. So an account, a computer account in Active Directory is the recognition of that account who has just joined Active Directory. Okay, understood? So you're going to see the same thing in, yeah, here. So if I go to the computer account, hold on, guys. Okay, so if I go to the computer accounts, and you see these are some of the computer accounts already. And these are the ones, those have been created by either Active Directory directly, because for example, I am the administrator and I say, okay, I got 5 laptops and I need to get them joined with domain. So I log into my laptop and I right click, just like for example, I do the same activity. I go to the this and I search for computer object, my computer, this PC. You right click, you go to properties, right? So for example, I pick this one. So this is going to rename this computer system. Once I rename it, I need to rejoin the stuff. But why? Because FQDN got changed. FQDN matters, right? So this PC name is SEAADM1. You can see here. And if you just look at this, system protection, remote desktop, device management, advanced system settings, rename this PC, group settings. So these are the settings. If I scroll down slowly, so this is the PC's software information. Same over here. If you see here, like we have got this kind of information. Now this PC name is SEAADM1. It is domain joined with a domain controller. So the complete name going to be adm1.contoso. Contoso.com is the domain name. Now, if I go back here, you see contoso.com is mentioned. So it maintains a complete FQDN. Your PC name dot your domain controller name is the FQDN, fully qualified domain name. Okay. Now here, this is the same SEAADM1 or SVR1. So these are the different computer names. In order to get them resolved, you require to have the DNS here. Like for example, I open up this one and I go to the DNS. It should be working, huh? Oh, it's SE admin, not the domain name. Okay, hold on. It required to connect with the DNS. So I need to, actually, this is the remote tools, RSAT, remote server administration tools. So here I need to key in my contoso.com if there is a DNS. So see, it is. And it come up with its zone configurations. So under this, you expand contoso.com and you see their name is resolved with their IP address. So this is the DNS naming system. Under this particular computer name, the IP is associated is actually solving these computers that are selected here, IP address. I can cross check by, I click here and I say CMD, run as administrator, and I say IP config. So it gives me the IP address and as lookup, it gives me the naming server and their relevant information, right? So this is the naming server IP address. And this is the default gateway IP address, but this is the local IP of the machine where I have logged in. The machine name, what is the machine name?
CAA.
ADM1, right? These are some basic commands. You may be aware of it, right? So based on this, you can identify and you can see like DNS server is telling me my name resolution. Active Directory users and computers is telling me the objects created within Active Directory resolved by my DNS server. So same thing
Kau punya pasti
in the groups, you
pasti
can define your multiple, you know,
account pasti
multiple groups, their associations, and you can say, hey, protect from accidental deletions.
ada dan
No one can delete it.
oh,
So these options most of the time are
saya kena
available
set tak
within Entra, but now also in Active Directory.
dah
So OUs,
ha
OUs are the containers
oh dah
which are going to hold up users,
kena set tak je
computers, security groups
lepas tu
also.
yang ni boleh buat lah
So you can see
dia boleh buat
OUs
lah bagi
even
dia
here.
password
So these are OUs. Yeah,
yang ni kena
all
email
these
kita
are
lagi lah
called, these are OUs.
kau email dia boleh
This is also OU.
buat email
These are OUs.
tak ada lagi sebab dia pakai email
So if you just right click, you can go to the properties
boleh
and you see its name.
ha
But if I cancel this one and I try to right click development, I go to properties, it is different, right? Why? Because this one is a container computer. It is not OU. That's the difference. A container is a kind of a folder that only gonna hold up the objects. OU is not only a folder. It is a sensitive container that can inherit GPO policies, giving you more information about what it contains. So you see here, you got who manages it, what is the location of the container, connectivity objects that you can set up with, and the general information. Whereas in the computers object folder, you can't see this kind of information, just description, nothing else. So that's the difference in OU and container. Understood? You can also see here, like even I right click, so you see like delegate control under all tasks, find and delegate control, nothing else. This is the pop-up menu. Now I change, if I select OU, I right click, the pop-up menu is changed. Move, delegate control, new task. You can add new things. You can add all tasks, delegate control, move, find, a lot of things. See,
sama
policy settings. Because OU got sensitivity towards GPO. Policy can be aligned. Containers cannot. So the limited set of commands also. That's the difference. So if someone asks you a question, hey, what's the difference in between OU and container? OU is not only classification based group of objects or container, it's also sensitive towards GPO implications. Container cannot have GPO implications. It's only the classification of objects that you can go with. Understood? So that's the container and the OU's difference. And you can apply the policies directly on OUs in this way. Comparing the service accounts. What is service account? Someone can ask you another question. Hey, what's the difference in between principal and identity? What do you think? Principal and identity? You may have heard this word UPN, user principal name. What is UPN? A name of a user written in SMTP format. adnan.hussain@trainocate.com. It's not only my email address, but it is also known as UPN in Active Directory. If my user account is created in Active Directory, so my name is written in the format like my name, my username @ Active Directory domain name. So my domain name is like mybiz.local. So my UPN going to be adnan.hussain or whatever, I use the nomenclature @mybiz.local. This is called UPN. Why I'm asking UPN to you? Because UPN is the primary tool. If it is not configured, you cannot do hybrid environment. Hybrid environment is 100% based on UPN. If you got some problem in the UPN, you cannot do the hybrid environment. Okay. In order to fix this problem, there are ID fix tool named kind of tool available. Identity fixation that it does. Okay. I'm going to talk about this later. Okay, now coming back to the topic, what is the principle? Now, let's suppose this is my, not a mobile phone, this is my name card. It could be my passport, it could be my CAD. So this is my national identity card. Through this card, I got a recognition of being a citizen of this country. Let's suppose. So this card becomes my identification, identity. Based on this card, I would be recognized by my country. Okay, now within my country, I enjoy the resources, transportation, public transportation, tax facilitation. So a person who enjoys the perks and benefits is the principal. You understand my point? Why I'm just telling you these things? Like for example, I got first thing first. If I wanted to gain access to a shared folder, and the shared folder name is HR files, I am the junior HR assistant, let's suppose. I've been hired. You are the HR manager. So you're going to give me some tasks, and these tasks are located in my HR folder. First thing first, what do you need to do? You need to assign rights to my username. What is my username? Identity. Correct? So the system gonna recognize me. And then what is the HR folder? Resource. Who gonna consume? The user. So in this particular case, I'm gonna be the principal who gonna consume the resources. But in order to consume the resources, what I needed, I require to be authenticated first. In order to do the authentication, authorization gonna happen next. Authentication is done by who? Active Directory. So how Active Directory gonna authenticate me? If I got my user account in Active Directory. Identity first, then authorization second. So the same person, first of all, going to be identified, and the same person later going to be consuming the resources. So principal is the person who consumes the resources. This principal could be a user. This principal could be a software. How? Like payroll application. A payroll application required to connect with the database. What's the database? Resource. What's the payroll application? Consumer. That connects with the database, dump in the data, retrieve the data. So all these things are doing by who? application. Database is a container that contains the data. Once the application pumps in the application require to be authenticated by database first. If database allows, only then the data going to be pumped in or retrieved. So an application on behalf of the user, the database recognizes going to consume the data, correct? You're understanding what I'm trying to explain, hey? Sir, or confused? Confused, okay. No problem. I can understand. Some days later, I used to be on your position. Okay, how to, um, you know, you use public transport, huh? This is TNG card. Consider this card is my identity. Where can I use it? In my buses, in trains, right? In parking lots, I can consume this card. If I don't have the card, I, being the consumer, have nothing to do with it. I cannot park my car or bike. I cannot use buses or trains. So this card is the identity, correct? Now, I say, hey, TNG, I want to use some transportation infrastructure here, so I need your help. So TNG actually creates a user account and associate that user account with this card. And TNG says, okay, pump in money here and consume it, right? So the system of buses, parking lots, or the trains gonna recognize me through this identity. So this is identity. Who gonna consume it? A user, myself, you. So a consumer who actually get identified by identity is the principal. Now you're understanding my point? So you are the principal. So you're going to consume the buses, you're going to use parking lots, you're going to use trains. But in order to use these resources, there is a system that either going to allow you or reject your request. That system actually safeguards the infrastructure, right? Parking lot safeguarded by the software over there along with the hardware, right? The trains and the buses have got their RFID based some tools there that I showcase my or flash my card and they recognize me. So this card is the identity. So the username is the identity, just like this card. Who consumed that username is the principal that consumes based on the identity. Now consider yourself like you have got your identity card associated in your mobile phone application, like TNG is your mobile phone applications. Last day I was with my wife on Starbucks, and there was some deals on Starbucks. I want to use those deals. So what I did, I said, hey, there's uh, there's a large regular size latte. Price was 18 ringgit, but I got a deal with 9 ringgit 50 cents. So I consumed my application that is associated with my identity to pay for it. So instead, I showcase something. My application just given me the perks and benefits. So they got connected with Starbucks and paid on behalf of my available funds. You see my point? Now that is called your application, consuming your identity, recognizing you, and giving you the benefits. Now, comparing service accounts. Now look at these three tables. A service account is actually a same identity used by applications on your behalf to gain access to resources like database. So in this case, the pink one, I mean, I'm talking about this one. So it's got managed by Active Directory. It's a standalone managed service account. Group managed service account, also managed by Active Directory, but it is going to be on behalf of not a single person, multiple people, like HR department containing many people, accounts department containing many people. So I say any person from account department gonna access payroll allowed. So in this case, if I am my user account is associated with the group of accounts department, so the group got access to the payroll allowed. So either I go with the purple column or go with the pink column, let's suppose. So you're going to have these accessibilities, multiplayer, single applications. So I want to do one person per action is going to be the lengthier activity I would go for. For example, 100 people. So which column am I going to pick? The purple or the pink? Of course, the purple one, right? I create one-time security rights and make rest of the people member of the group. I made my activity done. Or I go with a single individual users to add up and do the same thing. It's a difficult thing. Delegate managed services accounts. Now, what is delegate? Uh, for example, I am a person who has got direct access to the database. And I say, okay, I got access to database, but my boss wanted to see something. Either I pick my laptop in his office and I say, hey, boss, look at this. Or I say, okay, boss, I am giving you some rights so you can gain access and you do yourself. Providing rights to someone on your behalf is called delegation of control. So you can do the delegation as well. Understood? So these are the three different ways you gain access to resources, and Active Directory is going to help you in this case. So what management tools you can do, you can use in Active Directory? The first part is RSAT, Remote Access and Management, or Windows Admin Center, or the server administration tools. So you see, Windows Admin Center, remote server administration tools. So these are the things I showcased in my practical performance. I close this. You see, this is the administrative tools. So when I clicked on DNS, it says, hey, do you want to use it local or remote? So you provided the remote server address here and it got connected with your DNS. Or you go with a local one. So is there local DNS? I don't know. I say, okay. You see here, you click and you don't find anything. It's local. So RSAT, short name, but remote server administration tool, longer name, is this. So you double click these tools like DNS. I say, no, I want to connect the remote server. So I don't need to switch to that server using RDP or something like that. It's easy. So I just provide the name, contoso.com. See, it got connected with that remote server. And now I click and it gives me this information. It is not disconnected now at the moment. You can see everything is crystal clear, remotely connected silently. So this is the beauty of RSAT. You need to install RSAT on your laptop or on your desktop, and you can directly connect without establishing remote desktop protocol, which is quite a heavy protocol, right? So that is one of the use case for RSAT. And similarly, the server manager, the backside, you can see it's a server manager. Um, this one, not this one. That's one, server manager. Under the server manager, the tools you can see here, you can see a lot of tools are. Same thing. I can click on DNS and I can directly connect with the DNS server. Directly hits it. So it's much better. So you can use the server manager as well. So this was the server manager. Similarly, under the RSAT, you're going to have Active Directory remote connectivity, even with the PowerShell, right? Users and computers, sites and services, directory domains and trusts, and schema snap-ins. All these are available. If I go back here and you see, I wanted to open up users and computers. So you click here and you see here, Active Directory modules, sites and services, users and computers. See here. So I click this one and it opens the same Active Directory account through which it is connected with. Okay. So that's the demonstration.